thought I would ask each of you, how did love sort of factor into your basis for the project? Like, what were you thinking about, and what did you want to express?
I guess I'm closest. I just want to say congratulations to both of you. The films were really incredible and really beautiful to watch, curated really well by y'all. Love for me was the center of Noor and Layla. I really wanted to make a film that was about queer Muslim love and reclaiming ritual. And love inspired this story from the beginning, love for self, love for now my wife, love for religion or spirituality or God, but also love for where I came from and the way I was raised, and love for the rituals that I don't want to have to let go of because I'm gay. So really it was a film about self-love and reclaiming all of those aspects of how I was raised, and wanting to show love for my queer Muslim community, because I know I didn't get to see any of these positive, healthy relationships of queer Muslim people, and so really wanted to celebrate that.
I feel like a straight through line through your connection to love and your film. I also love in general. The song Jesus is the Love Song by the Clark Sisters. It's a song that I used to listen to a lot as a kid. I grew up in the church as well. So the film was birthed from just a conversation or recollection that I was having with the relationship I have with love, and the relationship that, compared to the relationship that I have with love in the church, and seeing a lot of the women in my family deal with many versions of love based on this notion around Christ, and Christ being the first love, it takes precedent over everything. Love of the family. My dad was a bishop, so there was a lot of lovelessness in that dynamic, but also it was ingrained within me and my entire family that, Christ is our first love, and I feel like there's some things to be investigated within that and some critiques to be had around. So it was just me kind of laying out all the different parts with speaking to Toni Morrison and Maya Angelou and Bell Hooks. They find their way in my work and research often by way of their words. So the film was trying to have a conversation with my ancestors in that way, so except for Bell Hooks. But yeah.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this, Maori. Shout out to Maori BlackStar Film Festival. I always say if it wasn't for BlackStar and the Echo Park Film Center, I would never be making films, so thank you for creating space for us. But in terms of love with this film, African Space Program Forever, was really, a moment to honor Rash G, a cultural giant here in LA, beat maker, producer, musician, and just amazing human being, my neighbor. And it was so interesting. I haven't watched this film since BlackStar in 2019, and there were a few brothers who had ascended that were in the film, and obviously we've just lost some real giants in our community. So it was really special to be able to watch it and just have this moment to really understand that's really what it was. It starts, the film starts with Kamau Daoud talking about ascension, and I feel like we have these angels and these warriors on the other side really fighting the good fight for us as we all navigate this very interesting time being a human being. So, yeah.
I just want to kind of continue in this vein. Something I've noticed with filmmakers and also often in theater and photography, there's these moments of surprise or spirit that enter your production. And I was curious for each of you if that happened in these productions, and if you want to share an example of just a happy accident or something more intentional than that.
I feel the scenes where the figure is dancing to the music with the Clark sisters, both, that was filmed prior to knowing that I would use the footage for this song. And it seemed like as I was editing, the movements were sitting with the beat. It was not something that I had to work on. It just, when I laid this clip together, and that made it all the more, I don't know, it was those were hard scenes to put together just because of the juxtaposition of the sensual body and the spiritual bodies on top of that sensuality, and it really hit the connection and the contrast that I experienced mostly in my childhood with how to approach being sensual or how to approach my sexuality or having conversations around it. And it was uncomfortable. It's still sometimes uncomfortable to watch. It was uncomfortable to put together, and it reflects how uncomfortable that stage was for me as well. So I really enjoyed the angel of uncertainty popping up.
I don't know. Oh, maybe there we go. It works. Here we go. Just really put it in the mask. I feel, so one of the things that I am queer Muslim. I write about queer Muslimness always, often, always. And a lot of times the narrative around Muslim people is, terrorism, hijabs, etc. And I find it fascinating that no one talks enough about jinn. And, we believe in ghosts. It's in the Quran. And I'm like, that is both one of the greatest things that I think we should talk about, and it's a unifying truth for 1.8 billion Muslim people around the world. So it doesn't matter what culture you come from, what country you're from, where you're raised, you believe in ghosts. And so I really wanted to bring that into this film, and I believe there are good jinn and bad jinn. So here we are, in a pandemic in September 2020 in Toronto, making this very queer Muslim film with a very low budget, and we're doing a little sexy time. Like, there's some stuff, we're putting on screen. And then we're talking about jinn, but using Islam essentially as these Islamic rituals as, like a meet cute, right? Like, these are the ways. It's like, oh, the azan, the call to prayer. Really, it's just the song they heard at the bar when they met. It's that same thing. So all of that is happening, and then we're talking about jinn, and there were several moments where, like, we had a pole fall down from the ceiling that was hanging a light while the two queer Muslim women, they're on the bed. No one was hurt. And all of us stopped and we're like, is that a jinn? That's a jinn, because we're talking about the jinn. And then at the table, when they were having their first date and they were breaking their fast together and playing footsie and then about to go pray, there was another light over this table, and it fell. While the two actors were there, all of us are around, it fell down onto the ground. Nothing was impacted, nothing broke, but it felt like we were communicating with something greater than those of us in the room. And it also felt like we were, through the love, pushing something negative out. So it definitely felt like there was this communication happening with another space that was both scary and also affirming. And I think that is sort of how I live most days. Fear and love.
I think similar to you in the editing process. The poem that's in the film is performed by Kamau Daoud, who's a big cultural icon here in LA, one of the founders of the World Stage. But when I took the Super 8 footage that I had shot and put the poem that Kamau performed, there were moments where things he says are happening. And, when he talks about wind, and there's wind, the gentleman who's in like that really sparkling costume, the wind is blowing through. So the editing process for that was really interesting. My older brother was actually in the room, and he's like, we kept looking at each other like, wait. And then beyond that, I hand processed that film, and I used some of Rashiji's favorite. He was a huge fan of Ethiopian food. That's how we actually became friends. And so I used berbere and churro, things that he loved to eat, in the chemistry as I was processing the film. And that was my first time experimenting with that. So it was really special in that way as well.
That's really beautiful. I think, Ness, you so far have made short films on film, and you've made 3, I think, so far. I'm very curious what has made you decide to work in this medium, and if you could talk a little bit, like a very short version for the audience, how you got to making films and what you're doing next. Go.
Okay. Timer. So I started actually, I've always loved film. Haile Garima was a mentor to me early on, and his films kind of changed my life. So I always loved film, but thought I would just, assist, kind of be behind the scenes. And then my brother introduced me to the Echo Park Film Center here in LA, which just celebrated 20 years. Shout out Echo Park Film Center. And the first class I took was a Super 8 documentary filmmaking class. We shot the film, we hand processed it, we cut it with, and taped it together the old school way. And I just fell in love. I'm just an analog girl at heart. I've always loved that type of meditative approach to making art. And so I've tried to shoot with digital cameras, and it doesn't speak to me. So I fell in love with it and just kind of stuck with it. It's a really expensive medium to work in, but I find it to be just, for the festival, we had shot all day. I mean, the festival was all day, but I had 2 rolls of film, so 6 minutes of film, and to me, that's so much more valuable than had I shot the entire festival. It feels like a spiritual process where whatever I need to capture will be captured in that short time frame. And then next, my first short that I worked on for BlackStar in, I think it was 2018, called Baraka. I want to expand that and kind of make that a multimedia experience and continue to document my family history. And so I'm going to be going to Ethiopia in January and continuing on that project. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Rikkí, you have a practice that goes in between sort of work for the cinema and work for galleries and museums, and just curious how you came to your practice and what you're working on next.
So my filmmaking practice came from my photographic process, and I started in photography. In my images, I feel sometimes I have a moment where I want to see more or feel like an image is moving possibly, or there's a conversation that needs to be had, and that was when I made my first short film, A Ritual of Sisterhood, which screened and premiered at BlackStar in 2019, and that was such a beautiful conversation starter around sisterhood, and the conversation is still being had today whenever that film is screened, or this photo series is along with the photo series. That's an ongoing series around sisterhood and the familial relationship. As far as in the gallery space, have seen that experimental film has a space in the gallery setting, but that's still an interesting place to navigate.
You want to tell them that you just sold your first piece at Art Basel? Come on,
I
girl.
did. It's actually exciting. I am. But yeah, no, I was screening film in a show that they wanted me to show still work, so it's that space of you can show certain things, or there's a place and space for everything, but I missed the film festival setting. I didn't make it to Philly this past year, but I enjoyed the access around films being online through gallery spaces. A lot of programmers, like Aaron Cristobal, was putting together things that the access that my family was able to finally see my films, and I could just send links to people, and these are the people who this work is for, as opposed to the gallery spaces. There's a hierarchy, and there is just access around that and location, and I mean there's the nuances of all that, but I like the direction everything is going in these days. I think the pandemic, unfortunately, but also showed different ways of going about viewership and access in that realm.
And what are you working on next?
My documentary, so my food documentary that I've been shooting with my grandmother for 4 years in Alabama. my grandmother passed away January earlier this year, so I'm actually this entire month, I leave tomorrow to edit until next year. But yeah, the documentary and more. I got a dark room this summer, so I built it all out, and I've been doing all analog, black and white processing, and yeah, the meditative process around. I mean, I really loved editing. Like, that's one of my favorite parts of the filmmaking process. And that's a meditative process in a way, but really sitting with your work from start to beginning is a transformative experience. And it really, I haven't picked up my digital camera in a while. It's just like you said, what needs to be captured will be captured. And I just take an experimental approach to getting what I need to get. Anyways, I'll shoot with anything. My phone, my little baby camera. Yeah.
Thank you. Fawzia, I know less about your practice, so could you share with us, I don't know, is this your first film? Or?
This is I would say it's the second film I ever solo directed, and it's the first film that I made with more than 3 people. But I say that my first short, so I wasn't an artist, an actor, a writer, or director. I was actually a lawyer. I know. And I started taking acting and comedy classes, and then eventually was lawyering by day and taking acting classes by night, and then left that to do social justice performance work at colleges around the country, and then started writing because there just weren't roles for Pakistani queer Muslim women. Go figure. And so I thought I had to write them, and then started creating my own content, but not directing the work. And recently, actually, mostly, I made one tiny short film in July before the pandemic. And then my directing, since then I've made 5 shorts in the last year and a half. And it really struck me that I was always seeking for someone outside of myself to tell my story better than I could. And I think the greatest form of self-love I've found now is to tell that story and to have that hand in the directing process. And that's been really beautiful for me. And I love comedy, so that's why there's suddenly, you're like, why are they yelling at this broken vase? I really just find that to be integrated in every part of my life, and in the most dramatic moments, there's always laughter. I made a short earlier this year in February, the Sayed Family Xmas Eve Game Night, and that world premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival in September. And we're hoping to turn that into television. Well, don't worry, we'll tell you all about it. When I know, you'll know. Just directing and writing more. I'm making a feature in Canada that my wife is producing, who also is a producer on this, and that's inspired by my one-person show. So I definitely have always been like, where is the story? How do I tell it? Oh, and had sort of a very circuitous path to being here, and feel really, I said this to you earlier, but I feel really honored to be in this program with such incredible voices, and to have screened at BlackStar for the first time this year with one of my films.
Thank you. Alex, do we want to do audience questions? Well, I'll take one, sure.
I think earlier I mentioned just the meditative process around editing. Also, meditation is my form of prayer these days. I'm not actually religious in the sense of how I was raised, but or practicing any specific religion beyond just continuously being in tune with myself and my surroundings. And nature is a huge part of my process. I'm usually editing outdoors. Most of this film was shot like while I'm away, and I'm able to actually sit with myself. Because I shot, edited, all the things. I'm very inspired when people get money. And you can have an entire team, which is the growth process that I've found myself in currently. And so it's amazing to have support and production support and sound support, and but I had to create the thing that I needed to answer this question. And so all of that was just such a meditative process, sitting with all the pieces of a film, which I think is important for a filmmaker in my eyes, just to have that moment of doing all the things first time, and then you see how having a team or somebody to go through the process with you could be healing as well.
I mean, I have a very complicated relationship with prayer and religion, and I myself don't consider myself really very ritualistically Muslim, but the ultimate piece for me of complete self-love was I want to love everything about my religion, my culture, where I come from, what I was raised, and if the light is in people who have faith, the light is also in me. And I have faith, and maybe it doesn't look or sound exactly like what my mother wanted me to believe, but I have faith, and I am light. And so Nur, it means light in Arabic. Layla means night or dark. And so there's both the idea, we start on this surah that is very important in the Muslim faith, and that name, we all want the light. We're all taught that we are supposed to be the light. And so it was really reclaiming the fact that gay, Muslim people, queer, trans, non-binary, we are light. And so that was something I really wanted to bring to this. And, really all those rituals, like, I wanted to have this use Islam as a meet cute. I wanted to normalize the call to prayer. One of the things for Muslims is, yes, there's two sounds, I guess, that bring us all together. Like when you're a baby in the womb, you hear like the heartbeat of the mother, right? Also, when you're born as a Muslim, the first thing that's supposed to happen to you is the call to prayer gets sung into your ear. Before anything happens, you hear that when you are barely even a person, And so that sound is carried with us in our subconsciousness. And then you hear it all the time. And since I was a kid, I've been thinking about is this for me? What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to go pray? If I don't pray, am I a bad person? Is the light not in me? And so I really wanted to also, I'm fascinated by what else do we do when the call goes off? Even really religious people, they don't always just drop everything and pray like robots. They're fighting, they're having sex, they're eating, they're confused, they're happy, they're going through the range of motions that a human being has, and emotions. And so really wanted to explore that. So I often say that queerness brought me closer to Islam, and it did. And bringing it all together in this film was really me presenting my own personal journey of self-love and love for another person, my wife. I mean, we were in the pandemic when I rewrote this script, and we had just gotten married, and I had dreamt of having these wedding rituals, and there we were alone in a home in Toronto, far away from a lot of people that we care about, definitely not connected to my blood family. And we were like, let's do the henna ritual, let's do the mehndi that we never got to do. And we did that sitting together. We wrote our names on each other's bodies. And really, for me, it was like, oh, this is love. This is God. This is faith. This is the spirituality, is this bond to self and this bond, this love that I have for this person. I don't know if that answered the question, but that's what I got.
Any others? Sure.
Okay. Now it is. This question is for Rikkí. I was wondering You mentioned this film, is in some ways exploring also certain, I guess, things from your past relationship with your family. And then you talked about your family being able to see this film for the first time finally. So I just was wondering what that was like and what you heard from them, and I guess if that was a part of the process of the healing also as well, or not.
Yeah, some of my family saw this film, not everybody. I feel like my family has a relationship to my work that's mostly, we're happy that you're doing what you love that you're doing. My sisters, I have more conversations with about my work. I don't believe my parents saw this work, but that was a thought in the beginning of things that was disseminated throughout the process because it was a personal journey. I think my work is definitely meant to, for me, I know that it's birth and it comes from just the understanding of like what is going on or what is happening with, this phase of my life or my relationship to a thing or a concept. So just really wanting to be solid, or not even solid, but just laying the things out and seeing them clearly, to know that I know. And I think my family could see that it definitely raised, I think there was some confusion. I think that there was also some not misunderstandings, but just, it was interesting, but I also am not necessarily removed from my family, but I'm not close. My family is in Alabama and Illinois, and I live here, so that distance also creates a distance, like in communication in some ways, and I can talk about the things that actually matter, and also listen to concerns, and that is a conversation starter as well that may not have ever been able to be had within my family. So I was open to all the things that could possibly come from this, but not necessarily focused on that and getting what I needed to get out.
And I think we have time for one more. Anyone else? No? Okay, well, let's give them another round of applause.